Come see me on tour in Appleton, Wisconsin, Rosemont, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Fort Wayne, Hermosa Beach, Sacramento, San Francisco, Irvine. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Here's the last thing I'd like to show you. Now, here's the current head of the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, and who was scheduled to come on our show 2 weeks ago and canceled at the last minute because I don't know. But he's willing to go on these corporate news shows because I guess he's not afraid of getting challenged by them. But and I'm on board with the Maha. I'm on board with RFK. RFK had no trouble. Marty Makary sent me DMs asking to come on my show before he was the head of the FDA, when he had a book to sell. Now that he's the head of the FDA, he's too good for shows like us because we might ask him a question from the left. And he doesn't want those. He wants corporate misinformation. He can knock that down, but he can't knock down what I'm going to say. But anyway, here he is. He knocks down. Here's Elizabeth Vargas. And listen to this garbage.
But we should note that vaccine injury and, God forbid, vaccine deaths have been a very, very small minority of the hundreds of millions of people who've taken this vaccine.
Hundreds of thousands of Americans describe vaccine injury. 25% of clinicians know of somebody that's been significantly disabled or died from a vaccine. I know of 3 people who have died from the COVID vaccine, not personally, but through a physician or friend that has had a first-degree contact with someone who has had a vaccine complication. We know there's a risk of myocarditis in young, healthy men. That's 1 in 2,600 young boys. So when people use these blanket terms, they're ignoring the very nuanced question in medical science, and that is, do the benefits outweigh the risks? That is the question. Not let's blindfold ourselves and insist that everybody take this. Look at the last administration, rubber stamping COVID boosters every year with no updated clinical trial. And we said we're not going to keep going down this road. We don't believe in COVID vaccine boosters forever unless we have evidence to support it. We're bringing back gold standard science and common sense.
So bravo to Marty Makary for doing that. It wasn't hard to knock that down because I don't doubt that she doesn't know anything about COVID. I don't think she knows anything, and she just reads what her producer has written and told her to say. And so just like Chris Cuomo, when he was hosting on CNN, he was repeating the same garbage about ivermectin and same garbage about the vaccine and lockdowns and masks. And then he got vaccine injured, and then he started getting treated with ivermectin from his doctor. And then he was like, oh, we were lied to about ivermectin, which is kind of late for a newsman to figure out 4 years after the fact. But anyway, there it is. So, and I just want to play this. I played this earlier in the show. I want to play it one more time. If you want to know the truth about the Pfizer vaccine for COVID, here's RFK to tell you.
We've never seen these kind of adverse reactions. They were predictable because if you look at the clinical trial data, even though they lied on the clinical trial data, Pfizer lied. We know that. There's no doubt about it. Marty Makary is a good example. She was one of 1,100 children in the 11 to 15-year-old trial. So they're going to give this to 76 million children based on these tiny trials. And so any signal that you see in those trials, you have to assume is going to reverberate. You can extrapolate to the much larger group. Marty Makary got a fever immediately after her vaccine, and she later gets seizures, and now she's in a wheelchair, apparently for life, and she's on a feeding tube. That's a fate worse than death, and it's to a cohort that has zero risk from dying of COVID. And if they give this to 76 million kids, they can expect that an injury like that will occur in 1 in every 1,100 kids. It's not guaranteed, but that's what Pfizer, when you do the clinical trial, that is how it works. You extrapolate any injury to the population as a whole. So that's 70,000 kids or something like that who could be injured in that terrible way. Kids who are at zero risk from COVID, plus the heart attacks we're seeing, the strokes we're seeing, the death rates from this vaccine there's been more deaths in 8 months than in all the billions of vaccines combined over the last 30 years. From this one vaccine, 17,000 recorded deaths in the United States, and we know the death rate is much, much higher than that. Probably 40 times. The best math, the best studies are showing that it's 40 times that. So, the risks from the vaccine they're completely untenable. If people knew the truth, they would not be taking this vaccine. And then the benefits of the vaccine are apparently zero or even sub-zero after 6 months. The British data is showing that the people who are vaccinated are actually more likely in many age categories to get COVID than people who are unvaccinated, which, by the way, was predicted. Now, we know that Pfizer knew this was going to happen because in their clinical trial, in the 6-month clinical trial, it was only 6 months. At the end of that period, 20 people died in the vaccine group and only 14 in the placebo group of all-cause mortality. There were 5 heart attacks in the vaccine group and only 1 in the placebo group. So your chance of dying of a heart attack from that vaccine, according to their own studies, is 500% greater than if you're unvaccinated. So they knew we were going to kill a lot of people, and they did it anyway. And people need to be able to see those studies and understand the deception, this criminal deception that has been imposed upon them.
And so, how do we get the corporate news? How do we get them? Even because they're funded by Big Pharma, which is why they lie about the vaccines. They lied about COVID, all things COVID, and they smear and slander anybody telling the truth about it. How do we get those? How can we? What can we do? I just don't see it happening until corporate news starts to tell a little bit of the truth about COVID. People will still walk around ignorant of it and still sanctimonious and indignant while repeating propaganda from Big Pharma.
It's an issue. Kennedy's talked about, and Trump has talked about, ending direct-to-consumer prescription pharmaceutical drug advertising. That's what owns the media. Bobby Kennedy used to call it farm media. It's inseparable, right? They're totally intertwined. Interestingly, there are a couple bills in the Senate about ending direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical prescription drug advertising. We're one of 2 countries in the world that does this, Jimmy. So that would be huge to basically get the money for drugs out of the corporate media. It would be huge. I think a lot of people have that objective, including even some Democrats. So I think we have to watch that. That would make a huge difference. Until that happens, I agree with you. It's going to be very hard to do that. But, corporate media is dying. It's a dinosaur, Jimmy. I mean, independent media, your show, Children's Health Defense, a million other smaller venues. We've taken over the majority of people watching, the Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. These people are not on corporate media, but they have viewerships that are huge compared to what CNN and MSNBC have these days. These are all, it's very positive when you see the head of the FDA gets to go on and smack down an empty-headed news host like that. So bravo to Marty Makary. Bravo. I mean, it's just amazing to me that a news host doesn't have access to this information. RFK was saying this years ago. This wasn't years ago.
Yeah.
That's several years. That's in Europe. Oracle is a British, and that's from CHD Europe. Yeah, that's from several years ago. And candidly, he doesn't talk quite like that now. Yeah, the mainstream is years and years behind. You're starting to see little cracks right now, Jimmy. They are covering that Trump tweet. They are starting to suggest there might be an issue, and they're years behind.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you taking time out to talk to us and talk to our audience. And what do you, it looks like Trump's going to stand by RFK Jr. They're not going to, they're coming with all the pressure that I've ever seen them come to try to get somebody.
The irony is, Jimmy, I think both for Bobby Kennedy and for Donald Trump, when they come after them, that's when they marshal all of their forces. So it's absolutely going to backfire. I think it's just going to bring Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump closer.
Fingers crossed that happens. This is the bright spot in the Trump administration. Not a lot of bright spots in the Trump administration, but this is definitely one of them. And a lot of people, this is what people voted for. So, this is what got me excited about RFK running in the first place. And the fact that he's now the head of the HHS is fantastic. And well, anyway, I just wanted to, I want to thank my guest, Mary Holland. She's the CEO of Children's Health Defense. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Jimmy.
Okay, bye-bye. Come see me on tour in Appleton, Wisconsin, Rosemont, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Fort Wayne, Hermosa Beach, Sacramento, San Francisco, Irvine. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.